Welcome to another episode of Tom's Takes. Today I'll be talking about a little bit of a sadder subject. Normally my subject, what I like to talk about are relatively lighthearted issues. They're kind of sports, Chicago hot dogs, and movies. And once in a while I'll talk about my faith and sports teams. But today I want to talk about the passing of an actress, Hayden Panettiere. I had no idea who she was. I remember I saw pictures of her all yesterday on TV, and she did not seem familiar. They found her overdose. She overdosed on Sunday afternoon, and that's where they found her. I presume it was intentional. I don't know if she just was partying and she overdid it, or if she was intentionally trying to kill herself. But it's sad either way. She was a very young woman. She was 36 years old, and at first I didn't know if I wanted to necessarily do this topic, because like I mentioned, a lot of my material, I try to make it kind of funny, kind of lighthearted, entertaining, and I don't know if it was necessarily appropriate for this particular subject. But at the same time, universally, I think we could all relate to being lost, kind of having a sense of hopelessness. I feel like we've been there a time or two, and I kind of been watching a couple YouTube stories here and there. So I don't know if a lot of this is true, or what's true or what's not, but what I take of it is she's been a child actress. She got her first role when she was 11 months old, and then she was on a couple TV shows when she was much younger. So her entire life, for the most part, revolved around being an actress. I looked at some of these TV shows that she was in: Heroes, Nashville, One Life to Live, Guiding Light. I have not seen any of those shows, and the only movie that I seen her in was Remember the Titans, but that was already 26 years ago. I felt like it was yesterday, and she was a little girl. I think she was like 11 at the time, so I don't know that much about her, but I kind of heard a little bit about her life, and her and I, we live two completely separate lives. I mean, I don't necessarily find her experience super relatable. I can't imagine being 11 years old, being in a commercial. I can't imagine being 15 years old and having adults around me giving me uppers to get a bubbly personality. And I heard in her memoir, she wrote that when she was underage, she was brought to these parties where she was. They had her jump into bed with this gentleman, and it didn't go into graphic details, but you kind of, and it just, she lived a life that I can't necessarily relate to. But at first, when I heard of her passing, I didn't know if it was just an issue of just a lot of stress and not being able to keep up with expectations. I heard she always wanted to be liked, and she wanted to get that next role. I mean, I never even heard of her until just recently. And so I didn't know if I could find that necessarily relatable, but she had a lot of issues going on. She she lived her career as a child actress, and she had a post-mortem, I'm butchering it, but it's that condition women have when they give birth and they have depression. And she gave her kid away, and she was in toxic relationships. So I could really see how she was a victim of her circumstances. But it's sad. It's sad. I haven't walked a mile in her shoes, so I don't know what my mental state would be. I've never experienced that type of that type of grief. It seemed that she had success relatively early. Me, on the other hand, I'm almost like the complete opposite. My problem more than anything is I probably have a little bit of arrested development, failure to launch syndrome. I'm kind of 54. I'm still single. I've been working since I was 23, so I've been a responsible adult. But at the same time, I never I feel very much I have the Peter Pan syndrome. So we lived two completely different lives, but I guess I could understand the loneliness and all that. I lived 9 years in the city by myself, and a lot of times that could get kind of lonely. I never thought of my mind didn't go to a place where like, oh, this is I'm gonna unalive myself. But at the same time, I can see how if you had no community, how that could those negative thoughts can come into it. I knew two people personally that committed suicide, and both times I found it very tragic. The first time was I went to high school with this guy, Bob. He grew up, his parents, it's one of those cases where you could grow up with great parents, great family, but still have something like lacking. And that was very much Bob's condition. He in his 20s and 30s, he just could not maintain a steady job, and he was just a drinker and all that. And him and I, we would constantly get into, for some reason he didn't like me, which I don't mind that. I mean, I guess I'm not for everyone, but at the same time, we hung around the same circle of friends, so it was unavoidable that we would see each other. But as his drinking progressed, he got a lot meaner to me, and then he got a lot meaner to the circle of friends around him. And his last remaining friend was one of my really good friends, Tom. And he said, listen, you're getting violent to my other friends. You need to slow down on the drinking. You need to get some help with your anger. And until then, we can't hang out. It's just too much. I'm worried about the safety of everyone around you. So, and Bob was a bigger guy. He was like 6'4", and he was just a big, stocky guy. And then they didn't hang out for a couple months, and then he kept on calling and leaving my friend a voicemail, and it got angrier and angrier. And I listened to a couple of it, and it seemed very unhinged. It was just very angry, and he was just kind of losing himself in his depression. And he's talking about, hey, I'm going to come over there, and we're going to talk. And it was very like menacing and threatening. So I could see not wanting to deal with that just because of that particular aspect. And then he kind of we didn't hear from him for a couple of years. And then a couple of years later, I ran into one of my friends down at the city, one of my friend's brothers, and we were talking, and he was saying, yeah, Bob killed himself. And I'm like, Bob who? And then we found out that it was the Bob that I was talking about. And then we got details on it, and the more details I heard, it got sadder and sadder. He unfortunately went in the garage, and he turned on the ignition, and he did it on St. Patrick's Day. My friend Tom, he used to have a St. Patrick's Day party on St. Patrick's Day, and that was kind of a message to us, like a big like F you, I guess. But it was sad. It still bothers me to this day, and that was already like 22, 23 years ago. And then another person I know that passed away, we took an improv class together, and I was older. I was in my 40s, and she kind of looked like she was in her 40s. And she would, we would have a break after the first hour, and we would talk. And she would be like, "Hey, I'm sorry for unloading on you like this, but you're the only one that's closest to my own age." And she said that I've been dealing with depression, and that I haven't found work in the last 6 months, and I can't even get out of bed. I took this class just for a reason for me to get out of bed, and I told him it's a good step. Just because you haven't been able to find a job, maybe the best thing you could do is find something that you enjoy, and change your frame of mind. And then a couple years later, I found out that she too, unfortunately. I used to hate the term unalived herself, but at the same time, I think it is a nicer way to say it. But I feel bad for both those two. So I guess when I heard about Hayden Panettiere passing, it brought back memories. So I just want to say that it's human to have a feeling of loneliness and hopelessness, but at the same time, I kind of have a different mindset. I look at life as suffering. Life is suffering. You find your moments of happiness, but you have to deal with the grind and you have to deal with loneliness. And what helps me get through the day is I'm a Christian, and that really kind of helps my state of mind. Whatever tragedy or whatever I'm dealing with, a lot of times I pray to God, and even if it's nothing that's going on, and I'm just having negative thoughts, I still try to think of the positive. And lately I've been thinking about Jesus' sacrifice. It just there's a song that I saw a video with a bunch of high school kids singing it. Lord, I need you. Lord, I need you. Every hour I need you. I kind of feel that the more I get, I kind of understand that. It's just a lot of times when I'm down, I don't turn to drugs or alcohol. I've been reading a lot more books, and I try to turn to my faith. So I guess the positive message on this is, well, life is difficult, life is suffering, but at the end of the day, eventually, unfortunately, or fortunate or unfortunate, it does end, and just hang in there. I don't care if you're super famous, super well liked, like Elvis, Michael Jackson. They too deal with a lot of the angst that we do. Norm Macdonald had a joke that I thought was very funny. He had a joke about Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger has that song, I can't get any satisfaction. I can't get no satisfaction. And Norm Macdonald said, you're Mick Jagger. If you can't get satisfaction, what chance do the rest of us have? So I thought that was kind of a funny joke. But other than that, just take care of yourself. Rest in peace, Hayden. I really hope you find the peace and comfort that you found lacking here. But I'm going to pray for your family. I know she has a daughter, so I'm going to pray for the family. Other than that, enjoy your Tuesday.